The scream of metal against bone shattered the quiet of dawn. Tires shrieked on the narrow strip of road that cut across the valley, and dust rose in a sudden choking cloud. When the air began to clear, the ranger's vehicle sat skewed at an angle, its hood dented, steam curling from beneath. Just beyond the grill, sprawled on the earth, was a Mustang mare, her flanks heaving, her hide streaked with dust and blood. Daniel Reeves stumbled out of the driver's seat, his boots hitting the gravel with a thud that echoed louder than it should have. His breath came ragged, part shock, part disbelief. He had driven these roads for years, memorized every curve, and yet fate had chosen this morning, this bend, to bring him face to face with something wild and irreplaceable. His eyes caught on the foal standing a short distance away, legs trembling like reeds, head low but gaze fixed with defiance and fear. The mare tried to rise, hooves scraping against the dirt, but her body refused. Daniel felt a hollow ache open in his chest. He was trained for accidents, collisions, even violence between men, but not for this. Not for the raw, unfiltered desperation in the eyes of a creature that should have been untouchable. He knelt beside her, his shadow falling long across her body, and pressed a hand to her trembling side. The heat of her life beat against his palm, fragile yet fierce. The foal whinnied, a high, sharp sound that pierced Daniel deeper than any siren. The colt's instinct was to flee, yet it stood its ground, its small frame taut with indecision. Daniel saw himself reflected in that hesitation. Years of wearing a uniform had taught him to move quickly, to judge swiftly, to act without pause. But here, time slowed. Every second felt like a choice that could never be undone. He reached for the radio clipped to his belt, thumb brushing the worn plastic. Protocol was clear. Report the incident. Wait for animal control. Let the system decide. Yet the thought of strangers arriving, seeing only a damaged animal and not the fire still alive within her, twisted something in him. He lowered the radio slowly, his hand shaking. A gust of wind carried the scent of sagebrush and iron. The valley stretched around him, vast and indifferent, its silence broken only by the mare's strained breathing. Daniel's mind flashed to his father, long gone now, who had once told him that wild horses were the last true freedom this land possessed. "They don't bow," his father had said, watching a herd vanish over a ridge. "Not to man, not to law. Remember that." The mare's eye opened, dark and wide, fixing on Daniel as though she too remembered something older than fear. He swallowed hard, caught between duty and something more primal. He slipped his arm carefully beneath her neck, feeling her weight heavy against him, and whispered words without meaning, only tone, steady low, a fragile promise. The foal edged closer, one step, then another, head lowered but ears pricked. Daniel felt the tension crack like ice underfoot. He looked from the colt to the mare, then back to his dented vehicle. Whatever rules he had lived by moments ago seemed suddenly small. With a grunt, the mare shifted, her muscles trembling, and for the briefest instant, Daniel believed she might rise. Dust swirled as her hooves scraped again, and the colt cried out, a raw plea. Daniel tightened his hold, heart hammering, torn between the knowledge of what he should do and the pull of what he could not let happen. The mare collapsed back to the earth, her body shuddering, but her gaze never left him. In that unblinking stare lay a demand, not for pity but for choice. Daniel's breath came fast, the weight of the valley pressing on him, the foal trembling close. And as the first siren wailed faintly in the distance, carried on the wind from town, Daniel knew he had only moments left to decide whether to follow the law he had sworn to uphold or the truth burning in the mare's eyes. Daniel drove with both hands white-knuckled on the wheel, the trailer rattling behind him like a secret too loud to ignore. Inside, the mare lay on a bed of hay he had thrown down hastily, her breath shallow, her body still trembling. The foal pressed close, Every jolt of the road answered by a nervous stamp of its hooves. The sound gnawed at Daniel, more than the dented hood of his car or the siren he had ignored when he pulled away from the scene. He had broken protocol. Worse, he had broken something inside himself that could not be pieced back with paperwork. At the edge of town, the road narrowed into gravel, leading to a sagging barn whose paint had long since surrendered to the sun. He had not been there in years, but he knew Clara May still ran the rescue. She had never forgiven rangers for their part in the roundups, for enforcing orders that left her cradling broken animals instead of saving them. Daniel slowed, heart pounding harder than it had in any chase. Clara stepped out as he pulled in, wiping her hands on a faded apron. Her gaze flicked from Daniel to the trailer, sharp as a blade. "What have you done?" she asked, no softness in her tone. Daniel climbed out, dust rising around his boots. "She was hit. Out on Route 9. I couldn't," he faltered, the words knotting in his throat. "You couldn't what? Follow procedure? Call it in." Clara's eyes narrowed, arms crossed tight over her chest. "You know what happens when you bring me trouble, Reeves. They'll shut me down if they find out." Her barn smelled of cedar shavings and iodine, a place balanced between care and desperation. Daniel opened the trailer, letting Clara see. The mare shifted weakly, nostrils flaring, while the foal pressed against her side like a shadow. Clara's jaw tightened, but her hands betrayed her, reaching instinctively for the halter. "She won't last long," she muttered, already assessing the wounds with practiced eyes. "And you won't either, if the department finds out you're hiding this." Daniel's throat felt dry. "I didn't know where else to take her. Animal control would've." He left the sentence unfinished, but Clara caught it. Her eyes softened only slightly. "You think I can save her? You think this place is a miracle?" She shook her head, but she still guided the mare carefully down the ramp, murmuring low words of reassurance. The foal followed, trembling but unbroken. Together they led the Mustang into the barn, each step of hers unsteady but resolute. Daniel kept close, unsure if his presence calmed or only unsettled. Clara worked quickly, cleaning the wounds, her hands steady though her voice carried an edge. "You always did believe rules were for someone else," she said without looking at him. "Now you've dragged me into your mess." Daniel bristled, but he had no defense. He watched the mare's ribs lift and fall, the foal nudging her with small, desperate sounds. Something raw lodged in his chest. "Maybe the rules were wrong this time," he whispered. Clara froze, her hand resting on the mare's neck. For a moment, silence filled the barn, broken only by the mare's labored breathing. Clara glanced at him, and though her eyes still held fire, there was a flicker of something else, reluctant understanding, or maybe old grief rising to the surface. Night settled over the valley, the barn lamps casting long shadows on the walls. The mare lay stretched on the straw, the foal curled beside her. Clara pulled a blanket over her shoulders, sighing as though the weight of years pressed down. Daniel lingered, unable to leave, though he knew every minute deepened his betrayal of duty. When the mare shuddered suddenly, her breath catching, both Clara and Daniel rushed to her side. Her body trembled violently, hooves scraping at the straw, eyes rolling back. The foal cried out, a thin, desperate sound that pierced the night. Daniel knelt, his hand on her neck, whispering words meant to anchor her. Clara's face hardened, but her voice broke through the storm. "If she goes now, she takes him with her." The mare stilled, chest heaving, eyes half-lidded. For a long moment Daniel thought the life had gone from her. Then a faint tremor of breath warmed his palm. Clara exhaled shakily, relief unspoken. Daniel stayed kneeling, hands steady on the Mustang's neck, as though holding her there by will alone. Outside, the valley lay silent, but inside the barn, something fragile had taken root. An uneasy alliance, a flicker of hope, and the weight of choices too large to turn back from. Morning crept into the barn like a reluctant guest, light spilling in thin bands through the gaps in the boards. Daniel sat slouched against a post, his jacket draped over his shoulders, eyes red from a night without rest. The mare stirred at last, her sides lifting with a deeper rhythm, her ears twitching as though she were listening for some forgotten call. The foal pressed close to her, small body warm and stubbornly alive. Daniel rose slowly, muscles stiff, but his chest swelled with something he had not felt in years. Relief that had nothing to do with duty. Clara entered carrying a pail of water, her hair tied back hastily, fatigue etched across her face. She paused when she saw the mare standing, weak but upright, and for the first time since he had arrived, a smile flickered at the corner of her mouth. "Stubborn," she murmured, setting the pail down. "She wants to live." Daniel nodded, though unease coiled in him. He had spent years memorizing reports, filing paperwork, enforcing regulations. Last night, curiosity had pulled him back into that world. He had driven home briefly, rifled through old files he kept in a locked cabinet. And there, printed in black and white, he had found the order. The herd from the valley slated for roundup and auction. The accident would be their excuse. The mare's survival would not matter. The rest of them would be driven into pens, branded by bureaucracy, erased. He had not told Clara yet. Now, watching her wipe down the mare's side with practiced tenderness, he felt the weight of that secret pressing against his ribs. She glanced up, eyes sharp even in exhaustion. "Something's on your mind." "They'll come for the herd," Daniel admitted, his voice low. "Soon. If word spreads about this accident, it gives them reason. They'll claim it's safer, for drivers, for the land. But it's not about safety." Clara's hands stilled. She leaned back on her heels, staring at him as though gauging whether he spoke truth or excuse. "You've known all along, haven't you?" "I only saw the papers last night." He shifted, ashamed by the hollowness of the defense. "But yes, I wore the badge when orders like that came down. I enforced them. I never asked why." Her jaw tightened, but her gaze flicked to the foal, who nosed at her arm with gentle insistence. "And now," Daniel met her eyes. "Now I can't let it happen." The barn fell into silence, broken only by the creak of the rafters. For Clara, the words reopened scars. She had lost family chasing horses, her brother crushed beneath hooves in a roundup gone wrong. Yet as she looked at the mare and foal, frail but unyielding, she felt the tug of something old. A belief that resistance mattered, even when it hurt. A crunch of gravel outside snapped them both to attention. Daniel moved to the doorway, hand instinctively brushing where his badge used to hang. 3 figures emerged from the trees, their coats dust-stained, ropes looped at their sides. Locals, but not farmers. Men who carried themselves with the swagger of those who saw profit where others saw life. One spat into the dirt. "Heard you got yourself a Mustang in here." His eyes darted past Daniel, toward the barn's shadowed interior. Word travels fast. Daniel blocked the doorway, every muscle taut. "She's not yours." The man's grin thinned into a sneer. "Wild stock belongs to no one. Means anyone bold enough can claim it." Behind Daniel, the foal whinnied, a sharp cry that cut through the morning air. The sound emboldened the intruders. They stepped closer, ropes uncoiling in their hands, the barn shrinking under the weight of their presence. Clara appeared at Daniel's side, her face pale but her stance steady. "You'll leave," she said, voice even, though her hands shook. The lead man's eyes narrowed. "Or what?" Daniel held his ground, heart pounding. He had stood before armed men, had faced danger in uniform, but never had the stakes felt so personal. He thought of the mare's gaze on the roadside, of the foal trembling yet refusing to flee. He thought of his father's words about freedom that bowed to nothing. A sudden noise split the standoff. Hooves against wood, sharp and frantic. The foal darted from the stall, slipping through the half-open door at the barn's rear. Its small frame vanished into the brush, a streak of fear and determination. The men cursed, breaking into motion, ropes swinging as they gave chase. Daniel's blood ran cold. Without thought, he lunged after them, leaving Clara with the mare. The valley stretched ahead, shadows shifting with every gust of wind, and somewhere in that tangle of brush and rock, a young life ran headlong into danger. The chase carried Daniel into the thicket, branches whipping his arms as he pushed through. The men ahead crashed clumsily over the rocks, their shouts bouncing off the valley walls. He caught glimpses of the foal, a flash of pale legs, a glint of mane, darting through brush with desperate speed. The colt's breaths came in ragged bursts, audible even over the pounding of boots. Daniel's lungs burned, but the thought of ropes cinching around that fragile neck drove him harder. The foal stumbled near the edge of a ravine, its small body trembling as loose soil gave way beneath its hooves. One of the men raised his rope, the loop snapping taut in the air. Daniel surged forward, placing himself between the colt and the descending lasso. His voice cracked like a command issued in some other lifetime. Enough! The men hesitated, surprised by his defiance, then sneered as recognition dawned. Still playing Ranger, Reeves? Without the badge, you're nothing. The rope hovered, threat coiled in hemp and muscle. Daniel straightened, breath heavy, heart hammering. Maybe without the badge, I can finally do what's right. His eyes held theirs unflinching. The foal pressed against his side, tiny chest heaving, as if choosing him in that instant. The standoff stretched. The hunters muttered, calculating whether the prize was worth the risk. Before they could decide, a new sound cut through the tension. Hoofbeats, uneven but resolute. The mare emerged from the trees, Clara guiding her with careful urgency. Though still weakened, she moved with a stubborn grace, head high, eyes locked on the men who threatened her young. The sight unsettled them more than Daniel's words. One spat into the dirt, but his bravado cracked. "Not worth it," he muttered, turning away. The others followed reluctantly, vanishing into the brush with curses trailing behind them. Silence fell, broken only by the mare's labored breathing. Daniel placed a hand on the foal's back, steadying both himself and the colt. Clara approached slowly, her face pale but her eyes fierce. "You stood in front of them without a weapon," she said quietly. Daniel let out a shaky breath. "It didn't feel like I needed one." Together they guided mare and foal back toward the barn. The valley felt different now. Less like a backdrop, more like a witness to something that could not be erased. Inside the barn, Clara eased the mare down into straw while the foal nestled close against her. Daniel remained by the doorway, watching the two of them breathe in unison. For the first time since the accident, his chest loosened. Days passed. News of the collision faded, swallowed by other stories. But the Mustangs remained a secret kept by two unlikely allies. Daniel helped mend fences and carry feed, his hands learning gentleness in place of enforcement. Clara watched him with wary respect, sensing that his change was not momentary but carved deep. One evening, as the sun spilled gold over the ridges, they opened the barn doors and let the mare step into the open field. Her gait was uneven at first, but strength returned with each stride. The foal bounded beside her, legs still clumsy yet full of promise. Daniel and Clara stood together in the fading light, silent witnesses to a freedom too fragile to cage. The mare paused on a rise, the wind lifting her mane, her gaze sweeping the valley as though reclaiming it. The foal pressed against her side, both framed in the glow of twilight. Daniel felt a weight shift inside him, a release of years of unquestioned obedience. He whispered to no one in particular, "They were never ours to keep." Clara heard and did not reply, but her hand brushed his arm, a gesture small yet certain. Ahead, the Mustangs moved toward the horizon, scarred yet unbroken, carrying with them the truth that no law could bind. The accident had begun in violence, but it ended in a lesson etched into the land itself. Some lives exist only to remind others what freedom costs and why it must be protected.